stop to think about how something really specific, culturally specific, can just explode across the world, become like a global thing?
It's pretty fascinating when it happens.
Right. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that.
Yeah.
The journey of anime and how it went from this niche thing in the West to basically mainstream entertainment. We're pulling insights from sources, looking at this whole ascent, like anime's Western ascent, from niche to global mainstream.
Yeah, there's some great analysis out there.
And our mission really is to unpack how it all happened, the surprising twists, the big moments, the cultural impact, basically give you a shortcut to understanding this massive shift.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so before anime was, everywhere, it had this huge hurdle. How do you even introduce something so Japanese to a Western audience?
Yeah, those first steps were really tentative, almost experimental, you could say.
Totally. Like, think back to 1967, Speed Racer. That was one of the very first anime dubbed for American TV.
Right, and it kind of set a pattern for early localization, didn't it?
Right. It did. And then, maybe a decade later, you got Battle of the Planets, which was originally Gatchaman.
Ah, yes, the heavy edits.
Oh, yeah. So much editing. It really showed how tricky that cultural adaptation was right from the start.
Definitely.
But maybe the most telling example from that early period is Robotech in '85.
Oh, Robotech, the classic case study.
Right. They took 3 totally separate anime series and stitched them into one story.
Which, it tells you a lot about how Western distributors saw anime initially.
Exactly. Like, it was just raw material, something they could just take apart and rebuild however they wanted, not really finished pieces of art.
That's such a crucial point about Robotech. It wasn't just about making it understandable. It showed this early Western impulse to sort of control or reframe foreign stuff to fit what they were used to. And this repurposing, like you said, it inadvertently set the stage for all those debates about authenticity that, well, they're still going on in fandoms today. It's fascinating how those early efforts, which, yeah, seem pretty heavy-handed now, really formed the first impressions of what anime even was for a lot of people in the West.
And for a long time, it stayed kind of niche, right? Bit of a curiosity. But then the 90s happened.
Ah, the turning point.
Yes, something huge shifted. How did one single TV block manage to take this niche interest and just, boom, push it towards the mainstream?
You're talking Toonami.
I am absolutely talking about Cartoon Network's Toonami. Launched in 1997, game changer.
No question, it was pivotal.
You had shows like Dragon Ball Z becoming just iconic. It gave us the whole power level meme. It popularized the tournament arc.
Stuff we still see referenced constantly.
Exactly. And it wasn't just aimed at boys either. Sailor Moon was huge.
Right. It proved definitively that anime had massive appeal for girls and women, which really challenged some early assumptions.
Totally blew them away. And then you also had shows like Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, Bebop. A masterpiece.
Right. It showed anime could be really mature, sophisticated storytelling, not just kids stuff. Okay. It seriously broadened people's horizons.
It really did. And, it's interesting to think about Toonami not just as like a block of shows. It was more like a cultural incubator.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
This era was just immense in building a dedicated fan base. It normalized watching anime for a whole generation in a way nothing had before. It shifted anime from being this thing you had to hunt down maybe on grainy VHS tapes to something you could just watch every day after school.
Yeah, appointment viewing.
Exactly. It created these shared cultural touchstones for millions, a common entry point. It really laid the groundwork for everything that came after.
But, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Yeah. Getting these shows from Japan into Western living rooms, that was complicated.
Oh, absolutely. Not just a simple translation job.
No way. We all remember the big debates, right? It's dubs versus subs.
The eternal debate. Still raging in some corners.
It is. And it wasn't just about which voices you preferred. It tapped into these deeper questions, like how much do you change something for a new audience versus trying to keep it, authentic.
Precisely. And that tied into the editing, too.
Oh, yeah. The editing back then could be intense. Heavy censorship sometimes.
Removing violence, definitely. But also cultural references that maybe they thought Western kids wouldn't get.
Right. Or even cutting whole episodes sometimes if they were deemed too, weird or inappropriate.
Yeah, that happened. It raises the question, doesn't it? When you adapt content like that, what exactly are you trying to preserve? And what's okay to change for accessibility?
That's the core tension, isn't it? From your perspective, what specific Japanese things, maybe storytelling conventions or humor or social norms, were the toughest nuts to crack for Western adapters back then?
Well, that's a great question because it goes beyond just the words. Pacing is a big one. Japanese storytelling often embraces slower moments, more reflective beats, or it relies a lot on visual storytelling, on things being implied rather than spelled out in dialogue.
Okay, yeah.
Early Western adaptations sometimes struggled with that. They might cut those moments thinking they were too slow, which could make the story feel, I don't know, abrupt or even confusing.
Right, messing with the flow.
Exactly. And then there's humor and social cues. What's hilarious or just normal politeness in Japan might land completely flat or even seem odd or offensive if you just translate it directly.
Yeah, I can see that.
So those decisions to edit heavily, they were often trying to bridge that cultural gap, but in doing that, they definitely reshaped the original creator's intent sometimes. It was a real tightrope walk.
And sometimes they definitely fell off.
Sometimes, yeah, the balance wasn't always struck perfectly.
Okay, so let's fast forward, because now anime feels like it's just part of the furniture. It's everywhere.
It really does. Completely integrated.
So what happened? What was it about the digital age, about streaming, that finally broke down those last barriers and made anime just everyday content?
Well, streaming platforms were obviously huge. Netflix, for instance, made a massive investment.
Right. They started making their own originals, like Castlevania.
Exactly, originals, but also just acquiring huge back catalogs from Japanese studios. That put anime right alongside Hollywood blockbusters and HBO dramas on people's home screens.
It normalized it.
Totally normalized it. And then you've got Crunchyroll.
Ah, the specialist?
Yeah, started as this fan-run site, right? And grew into this massive platform now owned by Sony. It really legitimized simulcasting, watching new episodes almost right after they air in Japan.
Made it super accessible.
Incredibly. And you can't discount the algorithms.
Mm-hmm. The recommendation engine.
Yeah. Suddenly, platforms are suggesting anime to people who maybe weren't even looking for it just based on other stuff they watched. It broke down those old genre silos.
So it wasn't just for the hardcore fans anymore.
Exactly. It exposed casual viewers, people who might never have actively sought out anime, to series they ended up loving.
So it's interesting, this shift wasn't just about making it available, was it?
No, I think you could argue it was also about maybe the commodification of what was once a niche passion, bringing it to the masses.
Right.
But what's really key here is how technology and that ease of access just drastically lowered the barrier to entry.
Yeah, the friction was gone.
Pretty much. Anime went from something you maybe had to work to find, maybe trade tapes for, to something that's just there. On your phone, on your TV, often recommended to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that accessibility, plus the sheer volume of stuff available now, it just exponentially accelerated its acceptance into the mainstream. It's woven into daily viewing habits now. Sometimes people don't even think I'm watching anime. They just think I'm watching a show.
So, okay, the journey seems mostly complete. Anime is mainstream. But what does that actually look like? How does it play out in terms of, say, different generations or even the economy?
Well, the generational differences are really stark, aren't they?
Yeah, tell me about that.
Millennials, like many of us grew up with Toonami, so we experienced anime as something kind of special, distinct programming.
Right, it stood out.
Whereas Gen Z, they largely encountered anime just as regular streaming content. It sits right there next to Western shows on Netflix or whatever. It's less other.
Mm-hmm. Less exotic.
Exactly. And then you look at Gen Alpha, the youngest generation. For them, it seems like anime and Western animation might just have sort of equal cultural weight from the get-go.
Wow. That's a big shift. And the business side.
Huge impact. You look at manga sales in many places, they're outselling traditional American comics in bookstores.
I've seen those shelves.
And then there's the whole merchandise boom. Anime-inspired fashion, collectibles, figures, lifestyle products. It's massive.
Right, and conventions.
Anime conventions are major cultural events now. Huge crowds, big industry presence. They're not fringe gatherings anymore.
Okay, so when we see stuff like manga outselling comics or even Western animation studios starting to adopt anime visual styles, is that just people consuming anime, or is anime actually starting to shape Western creative output now?
Oh, it's definitely shaping it. I'd say it's moved beyond just consumption.
How so?
Western studios aren't just licensing anime. They're actively incorporating its aesthetics, its narrative pacing, even specific character archetypes into their own original productions.
Right, you can see the influence.
Absolutely. It's influencing storyboarding, animation techniques, character design, even marketing. So, yeah, if you connect that to the bigger picture, Anime isn't just something the West watches anymore.
Hmm.
It's become a significant creative force within the West, actively shaping tastes and trends across entertainment, fashion, you name it.
Okay, but with that kind of widespread influence and integration, you also get more complex conversations,
Yeah,
right? It's
right.
not all just hype and celebration.
No, definitely not. And it's important to acknowledge those critical perspectives.
Yeah, we have to touch on the trickier stuff that comes up when a culture travels like this, like the ongoing debates about cultural appropriation versus appreciation.
Right, where's the line? When does fandom become problematic?
Exactly. And related to that, concerns about Orientalism sometimes pop up. Western fans may be fetishizing Japanese culture instead of engaging with it respectfully.
Seeing it as exotic rather than real.
Yeah. And then there are the really important discussions about labor conditions in the industry itself.
That's a huge one. Contrasting the often reported exploitation of animators in Japan with, say, unionized Western animation industry standards.
These are really critical conversations to have alongside celebrating anime's success.
Absolutely. You've hit on some crucial points there. These debates about appropriation or labor or representation, they aren't just minor side issues. They actually point to bigger challenges in how we handle cultural exchange when it happens on such a massive global scale. As anime becomes even more globalized, it really forces us, or it should force us, to think more critically about how we consume media from other cultures. It encourages a more nuanced view beyond just, I like this show.
Yeah, definitely need that critical lens.
Yeah.
So what an incredible arc we've traced today.
It really is quite a story.
From those really uncertain first steps, Speed Racer, Robotech, all that heavy editing, to the absolute explosion with Toonami, which basically raised a generation of fans.
Built the foundation.
Right. Then navigating that whole tricky localization process, the dubs versus subs wars.
The tightrope walk.
Yeah. And finally arriving at this era of streaming where it's just normalized, part of the everyday media landscape. Anime has gone from this obscure import to a genuine global cultural force.
It's been transformative.
But here's a final thought to leave you with. As anime keeps integrating globally, as it becomes maybe less defined only by Japan and more like a shared global thing, how might that start to redefine what we even think of as Japanese culture itself? What does it really mean for something like anime to become truly universal? And what new forms might it take as it keeps evolving and blending with cultures all over the world?
That's a fascinating question to ponder moving forward. What happens next?